Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Mark with EnviroGuard, and welcome to another live stream. Today, we are going to be talking about odor removal using Dutrion two-part kits. And we've got 8 different things that we're going to talk about in here. I'm going to stick to my notes so that this is efficient. And so if you need this in the future, you can go back to it and even use it with your team, okay? We're going to talk about safety first and foremost. We're going to talk about sizing and concentrations. We're going to talk about proper product preparation. You won't believe how often I speak with folks, and the product preparation means everything. So we're going to be very specific in talking about product preparation. We're going to talk about aerations and dwell times, distribution, in other words, the use of fans, HVAC system, things like that. Then we're going to talk about clearance and airing out the property. Finally, we're going to talk about sales process and how that figures into these services. And then we're going to talk about estimating. So 8 different things that we need to go through with a limited amount of time in your schedule to do it. So let's begin with safety. All right. Everyone's heard me talk about some of these things time and time again, but it should be mentioned every single time that a multi-gas, multi-vapor cartridge needs to be used when you're working around high concentrations of chlorine dioxide. Let's leave it there for today. We could add other gaseous products to this, but when you're working with high concentrations of chlorine dioxide, a multi-gas, multi-vapor cartridge is necessary, okay? Don't substitute it or don't take for granted that you are using the right one. Make sure that you are using in the case of 3M, the 60926 cartridge. 60926 is the cartridge. We carry them here in the store. When we ship your order, we'll be glad to ship these with it. Our first concern is for the safety of you and your employees. And when you are using chlorine dioxide vapor, when you are applying chlorine dioxide vapor treatments, always use a full face respirator. Reason is that it seals out chlorine dioxide from the mucous membranes of the eyes, nose, and mouth simultaneously. Okay, you're not going to get that anywhere else except for a full face respirator. So this is number 1 on your list for safety. Number 2 is nitrile gloves. Okay, now it doesn't matter if your nitrile glove is a 4 mil, a 6 mil, a 9 mil, or a 15 mil. Just make sure that you've got nitriles on. If you want to make sure that you don't get anything on your clothing, then what you need is a garment that is splash or mist protected, okay? And that would be the Micro Max NS Global Suit. This is a 55-gram suit. It's not expensive, but it gives you everything that you need, including chemical splash resistance. And if that's the case, then with that suit, if you don't want to get anything on your skin at all and you want to be extra careful, then what you would use is a push lock, just like that, collar and sleeve system. All that you do for this to make sure it's secured is you put your glove on, right? And I happen to be using a 9 mil glove from Showa right now. When you slide your hand in, you're going to put it through the sleeve, and then you're just going to pull this collar right down over top of it. It's going to secure everything for you. I've got a demo here so you can see what that looks like in the end. All right, so this is just a protective sleeve, okay? But in the end, that's what your system's going to look like, and you're going to have complete protection right there, okay? So that's safety, very simple. Full face respirator, multi-gas, multi-vapor cartridges, and at a minimum, nitrile gloves. And if you want splash resistance, the 55-gram Micromax NS Global Suit from Lakeland, again, available on our website. Okay, so that's the first thing, safety. All right, let's talk about sizing and concentrations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a step-by-step guide. Sorry, we're in the shop right now, and somebody was trying to come in. Grace cut him off. Is going around the front right now, so it's a little crazy in here today. All right, so sizing and concentrations. Now, as you can see on my screen, and let me increase the size of this because you can't see it yet. All right, there we go. On my screen, I've got a step-by-step guide, and this deals with a 525-gram kit, okay? So this is what the 525-gram kit looks like. This is part A and part B, okay? I should probably put them this way from your standpoint, part A, part B, okay? These get combined, but not too soon, okay? Now, if you look at what we're showing on the screen, you'll see that every 525-gram kit is used for every 500 to 750 square feet of space. Now, what I'm going to show you is a calculator where you can get much more specific about that, and we're going to come back to this calculator several times. And let me blow that up for you just a little bit if I can. There we go. And you'll notice that there's a lot going on the screen right now. I'm going to walk you through it. Starting with the left-hand side, we're going to talk about square footage, average ceiling height. Okay, so if you have areas of a house where you've got some ceilings that might be 12, 15 feet, other areas that are 9 feet tall, just get a rough average, right? Do yourself a favor. Don't go crazy with it. But if you've got 9 and 80% of the space and 15 in the other 20% of the space, bump it up to 10, 11 feet just to take, that into account, but it doesn't have to be ultra precise, okay? So there you go, your average ceiling height, your average odor intensity. Now, this is going to be derived over here in under odor intensity, of course, and just rate it on low, medium, and high intensity. If you've got a strong smell from a fire or somebody's been smoking in their home for the last 20 years and you go in there and you go, wow, that's strong, you know that you've got a high odor intensity. If you go in there and you go, well, I can certainly smell it, but it's not like pungent. It's not, just doesn't, hit me in the face. Most likely medium will be just fine. If you go in there and you're kind of searching for it, right? You're smelling around and you go, I think I smell it, or I kind of smell it, that sort of thing, then put low in there, okay? And that's going to tell you your part per million count per cubic foot. So right now I've got a 2,500 square foot home in here with, let's just put in an average ceiling height of 10 feet, taking kind of into consideration some higher ceilings in areas like, a lot of times your master bedrooms, your family rooms, things like that might have a little higher ceiling height. And let's say that we've got a medium odor intensity. Well, that tells us that we have a part per million requirement of 150,000 total parts per million. Because what that calculator is doing is just multiplying the square footage by the ceiling height by the odor intensity and giving us exactly what we need. All right, so now you can kind of see, and I've put this kit selection down here so you can kind of get an idea of the different kit sizes, right? The 525 and the 2200. A 525-gram kit produces 50,000 parts per million of chlorine dioxide, whereas a 2200-gram kit produces 200,000 parts per million. In this case, I would opt for 3 of the 525-gram kits. And when we get down here, you'll see that we've got, number of kits, cost of kits, things like that. We're going to put those numbers in there using this information under kit selection. Now, you're going to look at that right now, and some people are out there going, wait, that price looks higher than what I pay for Dutrion chlorine dioxide from EnviroGuard. It might be. This is the highest published rate on the website. So the reason I'm putting it in here is so that all the numbers are very conservative, and you can see the highest potential costs. You can also see the highest potential estimate as well, and then you can make a decision from your side of things what numbers you want to plug in, okay? It's nothing to do with what we're charging you, but I want you to see how these numbers, once we get to the end of the estimate today, all work together to produce a final total estimate to your customer, and what kind of numbers you're going to be talking about overall, okay? And we'll run through a couple of different scenarios. Maybe we'll think about like a basement or crawl space area, a house, things of that nature, so you can kind of wrap your mind around what you might be charging for these services with your customer. I will throw one other piece of information in here. When it gets to the sales price, you'll notice that down here I've got number of kits, kit cost, cost of goods, and then you finally get to the sales price. My calculation in this is to keep you at an 80% gross profit margin for this service, okay? So just know that we're talking about an 80% gross profit margin. We can vary that if you wanted to make less money, more money on a job. We can vary that, but that's what's plugged in here right now. Okay, so sizing, going back to our step-by-step guide, and if you don't have this, ask us for it, right? Shoot us a message at, what are we using? support@enviroguarddirect.com, right? And ask for these documents if you want to become a member of our work drive, so you can get to these anytime that you would like to. We'll gladly send us your email address, and we'll gladly make you a member of our work drive so that you can get into all of our step-by-step guides, all of the technical data sheets, SDSs, all of those sorts of things. So we have spoken about the 525 gram kit and the fact that the range on each kit is going to be about 500 to 750 square feet per kit, all right? Let's also look at one other possibility, and that is this. This is the step-by-step guide when using 2,200 gram kits. So let's say that we go back to our little calculator here, and let's say that we just have a space that's 10,000 square feet. And let's say everything else is the same, a 10-foot average ceiling height, an odor intensity that's a medium odor intensity. Now we need 600,000 parts per million of chlorine dioxide in there. And now what are we going to gravitate to? Well, your 2,200 gram kit, each one of those makes 200,000 parts per million of chlorine dioxide. So from a use standpoint, you only have to make 3 kits up. It might be the choice for you on that job, but it may not be. And the reason I say that is you might go, yes, but this area is really cut up. We need to produce multiple regions within this area, and these 2,200 gram kits aren't going to be the best solution because of how it's laid out, right? I can imagine, let's say going into a corporate environment where we've got 10,000 square feet of office space, but you've got all of these offices and conference rooms and breakout rooms and maybe even a kitchen and all these sorts of things going on. So you may opt, because of convenience and being able to create good distribution of chlorine dioxide, you may opt to still go with 525 gram kits, even though conventional wisdom would point you to the 2,200 gram kit. So I hope that makes sense. Again, if you need us, we're here. Feel free to call us at 828-548-3900 anytime, and we can answer some of the detailed questions, walk you through this, and get you really comfortable with this process. All right, so back to our step-by-step guide for a second. All right, so we've talked about sizing, we've talked about concentrations from the standpoint of chlorine dioxide kits, how much chlorine dioxide that they make. Let's talk about product preparation. This is an important one, okay? So I'm not going to name names, but I have a good friend who we work with, and he was making a solution the other day, and I'll just use this bucket as an example. He was making a solution the other day, and he needed 4 525 gram kits for his total solution. In other words, his total odor removal solution. So what he did was he put 4 gallons of water into a 5-gallon pail, and then he put 4 A's into that, okay? So he made his part A solution. Then what he was going to do was he was going to open up all of his part B's and then just dump that in on top of it. Don't do that, okay? You're going to get a reaction between the two products. Here's what you want to do. Whenever you're making a chlorine dioxide solution from kits, you want to make your part A separate from your part B, okay? So if we had a gallon of water in each of these, and we were making a 525 gram kit, we would have a gallon of water for part A a gallon of water for part B. We're going to mix those just with a paint stir or something like that. It takes no time to mix these up. You just don't want there to be chunks in there, right? You just want it to be mixed well, not perfect, okay? But you want it to be mixed well, and once that's mixed well, now we're going to combine those together and make our chlorine dioxide solution. In and of themselves, this is not chlorine dioxide, and neither is this. Only once they come together do you have your final chlorine dioxide solution. Now let's stop right there. When is it that you need to put your PPE on a job? The answer is before you ever start combining any chemical, put your PPE on. And I want to mention one other thing. Always add, if you remember chemistry class from like high school, okay? Always add what's called your solute to your solvent. That means always add whatever is concentrated, the chemical itself, into water. Never add water to the chemical, okay? That's an important principle to live by in everything. If we were talking about cleaning today and we were dealing with grease gobbler or something like that, we would always combine our concentrate, our chemical, into the water and produce our final ready-to-use solution. Okay, so we got that. We're going to make at all times, we're going to make our part A and our part B separately. Then we're going to combine them into a final solution for use. I think, do we beat that to death? We're good? Okay, all right, now let's talk about aeration and dwell times. All right, aeration is very important for results. If you do not aerate your chlorine dioxide solution, you will get mixed results. And what I mean by aeration is that we are pumping air physically into the chlorine dioxide solution. I would show you a small version of that. Normally we have our aeration system sitting right here, but the past 2 weeks have wiped us out. There's been a lot of activity on those, and we've got more coming in right now. But aeration is essential to chlorine distribution, okay? And the reason is this. If this is our solution of chlorine dioxide, you'll notice that if you're making our Dutrion for disinfection, right? Once you make that solution, it's good at that total ppm count for 30 days. That means it's very stable in water. That means that the water doesn't naturally want to give up the chlorine dioxide that's in it. So the way that you get to that chlorine dioxide is you force air into the solution, and then it will release that chlorine dioxide vapor gas into the environment. Now, once that's released, we want to also have good distribution throughout a house or throughout an office or whatever you might be deodorizing. So at that point, what you want to make sure is that you have on air movers and things of that nature, because if you've got very high ceilings, you're going to want to make sure that you create a little bit, not a lot, it doesn't have to be a hurricane, but some sort of air movement and vortex within that room so that you've got good distribution without taking in consideration how a floor or a total building is chopped up. Which brings me to one other thing. Think about your returns, okay? And then think about your supply. Your returns most likely are going to be where you want to situate at least some of your chlorine dioxide for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's going to work its way through the HVAC system, all of your ductwork and things of that nature, and deodorize that ductwork. And number two, then from a supply standpoint, it's going to distribute that chlorine dioxide back into the environment. So the other day, I was at a job in Asheville, North Carolina, and we had multiple returns. If I remember right, we had 3 returns. We had one downstairs in the living room. We had one upstairs, kind of in the hallway upstairs, and then we had one in the master bedroom. And because the way that the house was set up, we determined that we were going to use all 3. Now, when you use a return, you want to station your chlorine dioxide solution somewhere between 8 and 10 feet away. The reason is that you want to form your chlorine dioxide vapor gas first, and you want to aerate that solution first before you begin distributing that solution through the HVAC system, right? Because you want that to get into the area first. Otherwise, if this was right next to a return, it's just going to suck that chlorine dioxide coming off that bucket right into the return. And yeah, you could say, well, it's going to get distributed once it goes through the supply side of things and comes out the vents, right? Yes, but let's err on the side of caution, and let's create the chlorine dioxide first in an area, and then allow the system itself, the return itself, to begin pulling it through your HVAC system. Okay, I hope that's helpful to everybody. And if you're in the stream and you have questions today, feel free to just speak up and ask those questions. I'll be happy to answer anything that you have, because there's, while we have these step-by-step guides, and while I'm going through all of this information about, preparation, use instructions, kind of fairly quickly right now, we do want to slow down every now and then and answer any questions that you do have, because this is a very effective way of deodorizing a property, but all of these little steps are important. All right, so we've talked about aeration. Let's talk about dwell times. Now, aeration can actually reduce dwell times, but rather than thinking of it that way, think about aeration as actually increasing results. Because the worst thing that can happen is that you say to your customer, hey, by the time you come back from dinner tonight, right, assuming that you got started in the morning, by the time you get back from dinner tonight, your odor will be gone. Well, instead of saying to them, hey, by the time you get back from lunch this afternoon, your odor will be gone, keep your dwell time at that 7 to 9 hour window, like we've always recommended for, large open spaces or large spaces like homes and things like that. And make sure that you get the result that you're looking for. Make sure you've got a satisfied customer who's going to give you a great Google review at the end of the day. And then as you play with it, as you get more confident in your ability to produce successful 8, 9 hour windows, increase your aeration, right? Take your aeration up from, let's say, like a 10 gallon per hour aeration rate. Take it to a 50 gallon per hour aeration rate. Take it to an 80 gallon per hour aeration rate. And then you can see about getting your times down. But get comfortable with it first and increase your aeration for the same amount of time. And then see if you can't go from an 8 hour to a 7 to a 6 to a 5, where you're getting the same results consistently. And then you can start increasing the efficiency of how many jobs you can produce in a day as well. Okay, but don't start by cutting down that window of time first. First, play with your aeration rate, and then play with getting your dwell times down. I hope that makes sense to everybody. All right, let's talk back about aeration and fans. So we're going to set up our chlorine dioxide and our aeration in various areas. And by the way, I am going to get to tools to help you with this, but let's just talk about the old-fashioned way of doing this right now, assuming that all that we had was some aerators and some 5-gallon buckets. Let's make sure that we're considering all, how the entire property is connected. So I'll take you through this example of the property in Asheville I was at the other day. So we had a main floor. So we had a total square footage of 3,800 square feet. We had a garage as well that needed to be aerated. And one of the first things that we ran into was that the property still had a lot of soft contents in it. Now, what I found out in coming into the job was that all of these contents were going to be going off-site for laundering anyway. So what did that mean to the job? That meant we're not going to start the job until all those contents were gone, because everything was piled up, right? We weren't talking about just couch cushions now. We weren't just talking about being able to open doors and drawers and expose the total environment to the treatment. We were talking about stacks of clothes on beds and bedding and linens and upholsteries and all these sorts of things that were, 2, 3, 4 feet of thickness, right? You're not going to be able to get the chlorine dioxide into all of that because it's all stacked on top of one another. So in that case, all that was going off site for laundering first. Once that went off site, which I believe was yesterday, now do the chlorine dioxide treatment. Why? Don't take the risk, right? Don't take the risk of a variable that you're not sure about interfering with your job and the success of your job. So if you run into situations like that, you know that those textiles are going off site, go ahead and let them. In the meantime, what we did was we did all of the cleaning and we did a simultaneous cleaning wipe down with grease gobbler at 2 ounces per gallon of the chlorine dioxide preparation, along with 2 ounces of sorbasis, which you see right up here behind me. So it smelled good the entire time as well, and the customer wouldn't come back into their home smelling that intense odor of chlorine dioxide. And we'll get back to that when it comes to the vapor treatments as well. So we made sure that we stationed one of our buckets for this treatment right between the open door to the garage. Of course, the garage doors were closed, but we stationed it right in the mudroom between the kitchen and the garage, because now we can control with a fan where that chlorine dioxide goes. The next one, the home was very open downstairs, the kitchen, dining room, and quite honestly, family and living room and everything were open to one another. We stationed another bucket 10 feet away from the return in the living room. Think about this again. We were using a total of 6. Then out in the foyer, which had high ceilings, we stationed another. We went upstairs, and again, they had a large area upstairs that was open to the stairwell, where there was another return. We stationed another one there. We stationed the 5th in the master bedroom where we had another return, okay? And where we could give ourselves good distribution into the master bathroom, closet area by way of air movement. And by the way, out in that upstairs area, that upstairs hallway, there were, I want to say 2 bedrooms, maybe 3, but again, we could distribute by way of fans and the HVAC system into that entire area as well. So now we had great distribution throughout the house, accompanied by both fans. They had air movers in there because they're already on the job, and then through the HVAC system itself. So I hope that makes sense to you in terms of how you can maximize distribution of chlorine dioxide in a home. Now, that brings us back to things like the Rhino here, and honestly, let me go over to our new website here, which, by the way, isn't live yet, but will be. I'm going to go down to equipment, because for a long time we've been saying that we've got a chlorine dioxide generator on the way. And we weren't just blowing smoke when we said that. So let me give you a status update. The generators are ready to be produced. Everything about them is ready to be produced. The only thing that we're working through right now is the final patent, okay? The final patent has not been issued yet, but once the final patent is issued, then these will become available, okay? That's the only thing that's standing in our way, and of course, because of the last couple of years, some of those things have been slowed down, but hopefully, very soon, we will have a very good message for everybody, that everyone who ordered these in advance will be the first to get them. So if you haven't, go ahead and add one of these to your cart or 2 of these to your cart today, and call dibs on it, right? We will fulfill everybody who has already placed an order with us first. You won't pay anything for it. We just need to know who you are and that you want one. And as soon as they're available, we'll let you know exactly what the final price is going to be. But the nice thing about both of the units now, let me just go back to this one page. Okay, the Rhino, this gives you great distribution in a very professional looking way. It doesn't give you aeration, so you would add your aeration to this unit, and it's going to give you great distribution and great distribution, okay? Without having to worry about any issues with it, right? This is custom built just for chlorine dioxide use. Now, the other side is the chlorine dioxide generator. This gives you aeration and distribution. And the way that it differs from the Rhino is that, as you can see by way of the picture there, you will be able to hook up, I believe it is, gosh, I can't remember, 6-inch or 8-inch flex ducting to this, and move that chlorine dioxide all over the house. You'll be able to tee off it, have inline fans that are sucking the chlorine dioxide consistently through the system for overall distribution. We got somebody coming in? Okay, now we've talked about distribution. Let's talk about clearance and airing out a property. So one of the units, this is the Honeywell BD Solo. Solo meaning that it is meant for a solo gas. You buy these so that the gas that you are testing for, let me say this the right way. Every one of these devices is only good for one gas. In this case, we're only worried about chlorine dioxide and clearing the environment for chlorine dioxide. So as long as at the end of your treatment, the environment is less than 0.001 parts per million of chlorine dioxide content, this little thing won't go off. But what you want to do is when you go back to a property after treating, you want to have this just sitting on your belt on, and then if it registers over 0.001 parts per million, then it'll go off with a little siren and you'll know that you need to air out the property. Now, the odor alone, because it's going to have that pool odor to it, may cause you to go, okay, let's open windows, doors, let's turn on some heat within the HVAC system, let's air this out. Now, you're still going to have a little chlorine dioxide odor remaining for a few days if you do nothing else. So that's when we'll turn our attention to Sorbassist, all right? Sorbassist was formulated to mitigate or to neutralize odors like this. And so what you should do is take 2 ounces of Sorbassist and combine it with 1 gallon of, I always want to say deionized water, but you know the water that you put in your iron, I can't think of what that's called right now because I always think of it as being deionized water, distilled water. You're going to just get a gallon of distilled water, put it in your fogger, your ULV fogger, and then put 2 ounces, this is an 8-ounce bottle, put 2 ounces of Sorbassist in there and fog the entire home top to bottom. Always start at the top, work your way to the bottom, all right? It will neutralize the entire odor associated with chlorine dioxide. It'll smell awesome. Don't tell your customers that you're going to do this, by the way. You can tell them you're going to neutralize or whatever or clear it, but don't tell them how good it's going to smell when they come back. Let your Google reviews speak for themselves once you've used Sorbassist, okay? That's all the plug I'm going to give for Sorbassist. But it's very effective in neutralizing that odor. You'll love it, and your clients will love it more. All right. Now let's go back to estimating. I'm going to work you through a couple scenarios. So let's talk about the commercial scenario first, right? And I'm going to plug in some numbers here. You can plug in whatever numbers you want to, but I'm going to plug in $120 labor rate for each technician. And in this case, I'm going to say that we're going to have 3 total labor hours into this. And of course, that's going to give us a labor charge of $360. We've got, again, we're assuming 1 person. If we had 2 people on the job, and I could put a slot in for this, but then I would just put in 6 labor hours. But for the most part, let's be honest, these jobs don't take more than 1 person to set them up and tear them down. So in this case, we've got a labor charge of $360. Now let's go back to our total ppm requirement here. And let's just say for simplicity, right, that we're going to go with those 2,200 gram kits. We're going to need 3 of them. And that is going to mean, what are we going to plug in there? We're going to plug in 3 kits. And our kit cost, let's just say, is $142. Again, that's on the high side of things, remember. And our cost of goods is going to be $426. Our sales price on that, because I'm figuring in an 80% margin, is $21.30 for a total estimate of $24.90. Now that's a 10,000 square foot large home or a commercial space. Now here's what I would do if I were you, just kind of thinking off the cuff. Some people want to know what that is per square foot or what that is per cubic foot. Well, then if you want to know that answer, just divide your 2490 into 10,000, and that's going to give you like, what's that going to be, like $2.49 no, I'm sorry, about 25 cents per square foot, and then divide that into 600,000, and that's going to give you a much lower number per cubic foot, right? So you'll have all of your numbers there that if you want to establish your standards and make it really quick and easy for you to say, 25 cents a square foot, or, whatever per cubic foot, you would have those numbers in your mind probably. But if you want a little calculator to do this for you so that you can, let's go back to our 2,500 square foot example, and plug in our 9-foot ceiling, and let's amp it up and say that we've got a smoking situation here. And so in this situation, we've got, that's a little bit too high. All right, 2,500 square feet, 9-foot average ceiling height, odor intensity of 8 parts per million per cubic foot. So it's a high odor intensity. That means that we've got 180,000 part per million Dutrion chlorine dioxide requirement. So let's assume here that now we're going to go with a 2-hour window for a labor rate still of $120. And in this case, how many kits are we going to need? Well, we're going to need 3, or are we going to need 4? I always say it's better, it's more predictable if you are on the high side than on the low side. So in this case, I'm going to go with 4 kits, and our kit cost, let's say, is $42. So our total cost of goods is $168. Our sales price of those goods is $840 for a final total estimate down here in line 15 of $1,080. Okay? Let's run one more scenario, and let's just call this a crawl space environment. Let's say that you've got a 2,000 square foot crawl space. Let's say you've got an average height. At one end, you might have 2 feet. At the other end, 4 feet. So let's just say that you've got an average of 3 feet. And again, let's say it's a high odor intensity. Let's give it the same number of hours. And in this case, you can see that at 48,000 required parts per million, that is 1 kit. So we will plug 1 in here, and that adjusts all the numbers. So now, to be able to effectively deodorize that crawl space, it's going to require 1 kit, and your total estimate is going to be $450 to do it. So I hope that's very helpful to everybody. Again, if you have questions, feel free to call us at 828-548-3900 or email us at support@enviroguarddirect.com. We'll be plenty willing to jump into a web meeting, onto a phone call with you, or respond to an email if you do have questions about any of this. And if you have a specific situation that you wanted to go into, feel free to talk with us about that as well. As long as we're talking about an odor that's organic, it could be anything from a pet odor to a smoking odor to a fire damage to skunk. You kind of name the organic odor, and we'll help you work through it and come up with a solution. Okay? So that's it for our Friday live stream today. We hope that this has been helpful. We are going to be talking about a related live stream next week, where we're going to go into a liquid application and actually doing wall washes and things like that. And we're going to break out some new equipment and show you how efficient and effective it can be to mitigate odor on hard surfaces like walls, floors, ceilings, things of that nature. And by the way, we're going to start having like these little, at first we were calling them recipe cards. Now we're going to call them cocktails. We're going to start having these little cocktails that are like, imagine them as cards, right? Except you have a QR code with it, where you're going to be able to click on it and for yourself see exactly what you need to take into consideration on all of these jobs. We're already working them up right now, so expect to see those from us in the next couple weeks, and associate those with all of these job types that we're talking about. So for now, have a great rest of your Friday, have a great weekend, and we'll see you all next week. See you then. Bye.